You saw me naked, human now my people, demand we marry or die. Jack never wanted trouble, especially not on an alien royal ship. But trouble had a way of finding him. He was an engineer, just here to fix the broken water filtration system in the lower deck corridors. The job was simple, or at least it was supposed to be. A faulty pipe, a leaking valve, a few hours of work, nothing dangerous, nothing dramatic, but that day, the ship's security doors decided to malfunction at the worst possible time. He was crouched under a panel, tightening bolts, when the door in front of him hissed and slid open. At first, he didn't look up. He thought maybe another worker was coming through. But when he did glance up, his heart nearly stopped. Through the doorway, bathed in soft blue steam, stood Princess Valara, daughter of the alien High Ruler. Her royal skin shimmered like silver under the warm light, her long hair flowing over her shoulders. She froze, her eyes widening in disbelief. Jack's mind screamed at him to turn away, and he did, instantly, but the damage was already done. He had seen her, completely, and in her culture. That was more than just bad manners. It was a death sentence. Valara's voice was sharp, human. "What have you done?" Jack stammered. I didn't mean the door. It wasn't." But before he could explain, the air filled with the sound of boots, pounding metal. 4 alien royal guards stormed in, their armor glinting under the chamber lights, weapons raised. One barked, "On your knees, human." Jack dropped his wrench and obeyed, heart hammering. 2 guards grabbed his arms and yanked him up roughly. He caught a glimpse of Valara's face, not just anger, but shock, maybe even fear. The guards marched him out, their heavy steps echoing down the corridor. Jack tried to speak. "It was an accident. I didn't know." A guard silenced him with a hard shove. He wasn't just being taken for questioning, he was being taken for judgment. They dragged him through the ship's grand halls, past alien nobles who stared and whispered. Jack felt like every eye on the ship was burning into his back. Finally, they stopped before enormous golden doors, carved with ancient alien symbols. The doors opened, revealing the High Council chamber. Valara entered from the other side, now wearing a flowing royal robe, her face unreadable. The High Ruler, a tall figure with eyes like molten gold, spoke in a deep, commanding voice. "Human, do you know the crime you have committed?" Jack swallowed hard. It was an accident. The door, the ruler cut him off. In our law, to see the royal heir unclothed is to bind your life to hers. Jack blinked. "Bind my life," another council member explained. "It means marriage, or death." The words hit Jack like a physical blow. Marriage, to an alien princess who clearly hated him, or death. Those were his only choices. Valara's voice was cold. "Father, I will not marry him." The ruler looked at her with disappointment. "Then the law is clear." Jack's stomach dropped. He didn't even know what kind of death they had in mind. Quick, slow, public, private, and he didn't want to find out. But before the guards could take him away, another voice from the council spoke. "Tradition demands he be given 3 days to prepare. Let him face the worthiness trials." Jack didn't know what those were, but judging by the smirk on Valara's face, they weren't good. The ruler nodded slowly. "So be it. 3 days, human. Pass the trials, and you may live as her husband. Fail, and you die." The guards released him, only to shove him toward the exit. Valara's eyes locked on his as he passed, sharp, cold, and full of challenge. Jack's heart was still racing when the chamber doors closed behind him. 3 days, alien trials, a furious princess, and a death sentence hanging over his head, all because of a broken door. And as he walked back to his quarters under guard, one thought kept repeating in his mind: how in the galaxy am I going to survive this? Jack didn't sleep that night. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the look on Valara's face, cold, unforgiving, like she had already decided his fate. The air in his quarters felt heavy, as if the walls themselves were closing in. Outside, alien guards stood silently, their long weapons resting against the wall, ready to escort him wherever the council demanded. Morning came too fast. The door slid open, and 2 guards stepped inside, their expressions unreadable. They motioned for him to follow. Jack obeyed, knowing there was no point in resisting. The hallways were filled with stares, whispers, and quick glances. Everyone had heard the news, the human who had seen the princess, the outsider who had doomed himself with one accidental glance. The council chamber was colder in the daylight. The golden carvings seemed less beautiful and more like warning symbols. Valara stood beside her father, her hands clasped tightly, her chin high. She didn't even look at him. The High Ruler's voice was steady. Human, you have been granted 3 days to prepare for the worthiness trials. Jack opened his mouth to speak, but the ruler continued. You will face tests of strength, wit, and loyalty, each designed for warriors of our bloodline. Valara's lips curved in a faint smile, not of kindness, but of confidence in his failure. Jack clenched his fists. What happens if I pass? The ruler's eyes narrowed. Then you live, and she becomes your wife. Valara's head snapped toward her father, shock flashing across her face. Father, but he silenced her with a raised hand. The law is the law. They led Jack to a training arena deep within the ship, its high walls lined with strange weapons, alien combat droids, and training pits filled with sand. The air smelled of oil and metal. The arena master, a tall alien with scarred skin, looked him over like one might examine a weak animal. 3 days? If you live that long, he muttered, handing Jack a simple wooden staff. The first hours were brutal. They didn't teach him, they pushed him, sparring with alien soldiers who moved twice as fast and hit twice as hard. Every blow left his arms shaking. Every dodge burned his legs. By the time he collapsed onto the sand, his vision was swimming. Valara appeared at the edge of the arena, watching silently, her expression unreadable. Why are you even trying? She called out, her voice echoing through the space. You'll never pass. A human cannot survive our trials. Jack wiped the sweat from his eyes. Maybe. But I've survived worse. She tilted her head, curious but still guarded. What could be worse than this? He didn't answer, just stood back up, gripping the staff again. That night, in his quarters, he noticed a small object on the table, a folded piece of alien parchment. He opened it and read the single line written in a language he barely understood, but the translation was clear enough. They will kill you before the trial begins. His pulse quickened. It wasn't signed, but he had a feeling who had sent it. When he looked up, Valara was standing in the doorway. No guards, no robes, just a plain cloak around her shoulders. If you want to live, human, meet me at the lower maintenance tunnels at first shift, she said quietly, her tone more warning than invitation. Before he could speak, she was gone, leaving only the faint scent of her cloak in the air, and 1,000 new questions in his mind. He didn't know if she was trying to save him, or set him up, but he knew one thing. The trials were no longer his only problem. Something else was moving in the shadows, and it wanted him dead before he even had the chance to fail. The lower maintenance tunnels were colder than Jack expected. The air smelled faintly of rust and chemical cleaners. Pipes lined the walls, dripping water in slow, steady beats that echoed into the darkness. He moved quietly, his footsteps barely making a sound on the metal floor. Valara was already there, leaning against a bulkhead, the dim light casting shadows across her sharp features. She didn't greet him. Instead, she stepped aside to reveal a narrow service hatch. This leads to the underdeck, a place the council never checks, she said, her voice low. Jack hesitated. Why bring me here? Her eyes flicked toward the far end of the tunnel. Because someone wants you dead before the trials. If you stay in your quarters, you won't see sunrise. He frowned. And you care, because... She didn't answer, but her jaw tightened. They climbed down into the underdeck. The air was warmer, filled with the hum of hidden machinery. Dim orange lights flickered overhead, It felt abandoned, too quiet. Jack followed Valara through narrow corridors until they reached a small control room. The screens inside showed different parts of the ship, including the arena where he had been training. On one of the screens, he saw 3 armored figures speaking with the arena master. They handed him something, a small vial glowing faintly blue. Jack's gut twisted. Valara confirmed it. Poison. They were going to slip it into your drink before the second trial. Before he could respond, a loud clang echoed down the hall. Valara's eyes widened. They found us, she whispered. Jack grabbed a metal rod from the floor as footsteps pounded closer. A shadow moved past the doorway, then another. The first intruder lunged in, an alien assassin with a curved blade. Jack blocked the strike by instinct. The impact rattled his arms. Valara struck from behind, taking the assassin down with a sharp blow to the neck. More poured in. The room exploded into chaos. Jack fought clumsily, but with desperation, swinging the rod, ducking low, using the cramped space to his advantage. Valara moved like liquid steel, her strikes precise, her eyes sharp. Together they dropped the last attacker, their bodies tense, breathing hard. Jack leaned against the wall. So, I guess you're not trying to kill me. She didn't smile, but her gaze softened. Not yet. They searched the bodies, finding a crest carved into the armor, a sigil Jack didn't recognize. Valara's face darkened. This is from my cousin's house. He wants the throne. Jack felt the shift immediately. This wasn't just about a cultural law anymore. It was about survival for both of them, and maybe trust, though neither of them would admit it out loud. Valara stepped toward the hatch. If you want to live, human, you'll need to win those trials. Not for the law, but because my enemies will never stop hunting you. Jack followed her back into the shadows, his mind racing. 3 days left, trials designed to kill him, and now, an assassination plot that tied him to the one person who might save his life, the same alien princess who still swore she would never marry him. The arena was alive with noise. Alien nobles crowded the high balconies, their voices mixing into a deep, restless hum. The sand below had been freshly raked, but Jack knew it wouldn't stay clean for long. Today was the second trial, the test of endurance, or so they called it. He'd been told it was a race through a shifting maze, but the way the arena master smirked when explaining it made him uneasy. Valara stood off to the side, her posture regal, her eyes scanning the crowd as if searching for danger. She hadn't spoken to him since the attack in the underdeck, but the way her gaze kept flicking back to him told Jack she was still watching. Closely, the horn sounded. The walls of the arena began to move, huge stone-like panels sliding into place to create twisting paths. The gates opened and Jack ran, his boots kicking up sand. Behind him, 3 alien warriors surged forward, each faster and stronger than he was. The corridors shifted around them, closing off paths, opening new ones. It was like running through the inside of a living creature. He turned a corner and froze. A section of the floor ahead was covered in a shimmering liquid. It wasn't water. The air above it warped like heat rising from metal. Jack threw a stone in. It hissed and vanished instantly. Acid. The crowd roared. The other warriors didn't hesitate. One vaulted over the pool using a wall grip. Another used some kind of grapple hook. Jack looked around. There was no way he could make that jump. Then he saw it. A thin beam along the wall, barely wide enough for a foot. He started edging across, arms out for balance. Halfway over, the beam jerked, snapping loose. Jack's heart leaped. He grabbed the edge of the wall, hanging over the acid. The crowd gasped. Up in the royal box, Valara's eyes narrowed. She had seen it. The beam hadn't just broken. It had been cut. A shadow moved in the stands above, too quick for anyone else to notice. She rose from her seat without asking permission, slipping into the service stairs. Jack's grip was slipping when a blur dropped from above. Valara landed hard on the wall beside him, grabbed his wrist, and hauled him up. The crowd went silent, stunned. "Move," she ordered, and they ran together through the shifting maze. But the assassins weren't done. A hidden gate dropped in front of them, sealing their path. From the shadows, a figure stepped out, armored, armed, and moving with deadly purpose. Jack grabbed a fallen spear. Valara drew a blade from her hip. The assassin attacked without a word. Steel clashed, sparks flew. The maze walls groaned as they shifted again, sealing them into a small chamber with nowhere to run. Jack ducked under a swing, driving the spear forward. Valara spun low, slicing across the attacker's leg. He stumbled, and together they brought him down as he fell. Jack caught sight of the same crest carved into the armor, the mark of her cousin's house. The gate lifted. The crowd erupted in cheers. But they weren't cheering for a trial victory. They were cheering for the unexpected sight of their princess fighting beside a human. Valara sheathed her blade, her breathing quick but steady. "They'll try again," she said quietly. Jack nodded. "Then we'd better give them a reason to stop," and for the first time, her lips curved in something close to a smile. The atmosphere on the ship shifted after the second trial. Whispers followed Jack wherever he went, but they no longer carried only mockery or disdain. Now, there was something else in them, curiosity, maybe even respect. Alien crew members who once turned away now held his gaze a moment longer. Some nodded subtly. Others looked away quickly, as if afraid to be caught showing approval. Valara walked beside him through the main hall, her stride as steady as ever, but he noticed the way her head tilted slightly toward him when others passed, listening for the tone in their voices, measuring which side they were on. The fight in the maze hadn't just saved his life, it had placed her in the center of a political storm. At the council meeting that followed, her cousin, Lord Criven, spoke first, his voice smooth but dripping with false concern. "It is unusual for a princess to step into the trials. Even more unusual for her to assist the accused." Valara's expression was calm, but her eyes were sharp. "When the accused is the target of an illegal assassination attempt, I find it necessary." Criven's smile didn't reach his eyes. "You have no proof of such a thing." Jack stepped forward, tossing the assassin's broken crest onto the table. The carved mark of Criven's house gleamed in the light. A few council members murmured. Criven's smile faltered for just a second before returning. "An unfortunate coincidence. Assassins use many stolen marks." The High Ruler leaned back, his gaze shifting between them. "The trials will continue, but I will be watching more closely." His tone carried weight, enough to silence further argument. But Jack could feel the tension in the room thicken like smoke. That night, Jack found a small message plate slipped under his door. It contained only 4 words in alien script. "Do not trust her." He didn't need to ask who her meant. But the question burned in his mind. Was the warning about Valara or someone else entirely? He went to find her, only to spot her already speaking in hushed tones with a tall, hooded figure in the shadow of a supply corridor. When she noticed him, the figure melted into the darkness without a word. "Who was that?" Jack asked. Valara's answer came quick, maybe too quick. An informant. He didn't press, but the unease stayed with him. By the time the third trial was announced, a test of strategy in the war chamber, Jack knew the challenge wouldn't just be about outsmarting an opponent. It would be about figuring out who, if anyone, was truly on his side, and in a room where every move would be watched. He couldn't afford a single wrong choice. The war chamber was nothing like Jack had imagined. It wasn't just a room with maps and tokens. It was an entire simulated battlefield. A ring of holographic terrain projected in the center. Mountains, rivers, cities all shifting with each pulse of light. Alien generals stood around the perimeter, their eyes locked on him, waiting to see the human fail. Valara stood on the opposite side, her arms folded, her expression unreadable. Jack still didn't know if she was here to support him or simply to witness his defeat. The arena master's voice echoed through the room. "The third trial, command and conquer. 2 armies, 2 leaders, 1 victor." as the simulation began. Alien soldiers appeared in glowing lines on his side of the map, smaller in number, lighter in armor, facing Valara's massive force across the battlefield. Jack scanned the terrain, searching for any weakness. He found one, a narrow canyon that could funnel her troops into a choke point. He began moving his forces, sending scouts to lure her army into the canyon. Valara's eyes narrowed. She recognized the trap, but didn't alter her advance. It was as if she wanted to see how far he'd take it. Halfway through, the holograms flickered. A coded message appeared only on his console. 4 words in alien script: strike the royal unit. Jack's eyes darted to Valara's forces. A highlighted mark appeared over a section in the rear. Her personal guard. Eliminating them would end the simulation instantly in his favor. He glanced at Valara across the table. Her gaze locked on him, sharp, testing. The generals murmured among themselves, watching his hesitation. The message had no sender. But Jack didn't need to guess who might have planted it. Someone in the council wanted him to publicly humiliate her. His hand hovered over the command. If he took the shot, he'd win decisively, but it would make Valara his enemy for life. If he didn't, he risked losing the trial and sealing his own death. Jack made his choice. Instead of striking her royal unit, he redirected his forces, springing the canyon trap he'd prepared. Her troops poured in. The holographic battle erupted in chaos, his smaller force striking from high ground. The simulation froze with his side holding the field. Silence filled the room. Then the arena master announced, victory by tactical maneuver. No one mentioned the untouched royal unit. But Valara's eyes lingered on him longer than before, and this time, there was no coldness in them, only something quieter and more dangerous. Later, as the chamber emptied, she stepped close enough for only him to hear. You could have taken the easy win. Why didn't you? Jack met her gaze. Because I'm not here to win against you. She studied him for a moment before turning away, but he caught the faintest trace of a smile. The final trial was announced without warning. No description, no preparation. Only a summons to the Grand Hall, the largest chamber on the ship. When Jack arrived, the room was already full. Nobles lined the balconies. Guards formed a ring around a raised platform in the center. Valara stood there in full ceremonial armor, her face unreadable. The High Ruler's voice carried across the hall. The final trial is the trial of choice. The accused will stand before the heir, and the heir will decide his fate. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Jack felt every stare burn into him as he was led up the steps. Chains clinking around his wrists. Valara held a long ceremonial blade, its edge catching the light. In our law, the ruler continued, if the heir chooses death, the execution is carried out instantly. If she chooses life, the marriage is sealed before the same crowd. Jack's pulse thundered in his ears. So this was it. No battle, no puzzle, just her word. She stepped closer, the blade's point resting lightly against his chest. Her voice was low, meant for only him. You've survived the trials. But if I spare you, I'm bound to you forever. Jack met her gaze. Then make your choice. But make it yours, not theirs. From the corner of his eye, he caught movement. Criven, leaning forward in the crowd, watching with a hunger that told Jack exactly what he wanted. Valara's eyes flicked toward him, then back to Jack, her jaw tightening. The hall was silent as she raised the blade for a heartbeat. Jack thought she might actually strike. Then the blade flipped in her hand, the flat pressing against his chest instead of the edge. Her voice rang out, I choose life and marriage. The crowd erupted, half in shock, half in applause. Criven's face turned to stone. The High Ruler nodded once. So it is sealed. The guards removed Jack's chains. Valara sheathed the blade and stepped to his side. For the first time, her hand rested lightly on his arm as they walked from the platform. She leaned close enough that only he could hear. You didn't win because of the law, human. You won because you refused to be what they expected. Jack allowed himself the smallest of smiles. Guess we're both stuck with each other now. Her lips curved in a way that was almost a smile, not stuck, bound, and together. Under the eyes of allies and enemies alike, they left the grand hall, ready to face a galaxy that would never see them the same way again.